Good evening. Damien and I are going to go over the master plan scenarios that have been developed by the facilitation committee. Has everyone received a packet of information with a lot of information in it? If you haven't, raise your hand and someone will be around to get that to you. We're going to go over this briefly because we want the bulk of the time to be spent for your use in evaluating the scenarios. First of all, how we got to 11 scenarios. A couple weeks ago, the facilitation team got together and brainstormed initial scenarios. As they put ideas together, they came up with 21 different ideas, complete K-12 ideas that a logical person would think about. Our goal was to make sure that we came up with a sufficient variety of options so that you would have good choices to give your feedback on. They filtered these options through the three things of the educational effectiveness, the physical solution, and the cost, and came up with the 11 scenarios that you're going to be seeing right now. When you take a look at 11 scenarios, they're really sort of variations on a theme. There are three different themes, and so you're going to see that the first three scenarios are variations on what we call a traditional elementary school model. The second three themes are variations on we're replacing all of the elementary schools and much of the secondary schools. And the third theme is an attendance center theme. Before we get into those, I want to just show you what you have here. However, you should have at your table an 11 by 17 or a couple copies of 11 by 17s that illustrate all of the scenarios. You're going to see that each of the facilities is listed on the sheet, and it tells you what its capacity is, its square footage, and the grades that are proposed for that scenario. On the far right, under a column called existing sites, you're going to see, for instance, on the very first sheet, you see it says JHS, Jacksonville High School, and then you see 40 AC. That means there's 40 acres currently at the Jacksonville High School. You're going to see the same for all of the remaining facilities. Then what you're going to see is a column under that that says recommended. And what that is if you are going to construct new schools, this is what the state of Illinois uses as a standard, what they will pay for in the school construction grant. So if you're going to construct a new elementary school, you would start out with 5 acres plus 1 acre for every 100 students. So if you had a 200 student elementary school, or let's say a 300 student elementary school, 5 acres plus 3 acres equals 8 acres. That would be the recommended size. Middle school is 15 acres plus 1 acre for every 100 students. High school is 25 acres plus 1 acre for every student. So that's this sheet. You're also going to have a colored sheet that lists the three themes. This is sort of a snapshot of all of the scenarios. So you can see the scenarios run across the top: status quo, scenario 2, scenario 3, and these are all the traditional models. It tells you what grades are going into what schools and the associated cost for that work. All right, with that, we are going to get right into the scenarios. Scenario number 1 is the status quo. It continues the existing grade alignment you have right now currently in use. What work is included in this is just simply the physical needs assessment, that $61 million or whatever the rough dollar turns out that Steve talked about. That's what the status quo is. So I'm going to ask Damien to go over scenario number 2.
In scenario number 2, so in this option, the high school would be receiving the physical needs assessment work as well as 21st century work to upgrade for future flexibility. There would be a new junior high on the existing Turner Junior High site, which would house 6th through 8th grades. There would be additions, physical needs work, and 21st century upgrades at Lincoln, Eisenhower, and South, creating K-5 at each of those three. Lastly, central office would house pre-K and have P&A work, and the remaining facilities would be retired.
In scenario number 3, a new 6-8 is constructed on the Turner Junior High School site. The Jacksonville High School gets physical needs assessment work and 21st century renovations. The remaining facilities now, because Turner has become a 6-8, the remaining facilities become K-5 facilities. They get physical needs assessment work and they get 21st century renovations. So those first three facilities, the first three scenarios, are what we classify under a traditional school layout. The next is where all of the elementary is new, replacing all of the existing facilities.
So the first scenario of that type is scenario 4. In this option, there's a new high school on a new site housing 912, a new junior high also on a new site. This would house 6th through 8th. And in this option, there would be 2 elementary schools, each of them housing K-5 on 2 new sites. P&A work would occur at the central office, the physical needs work, and also house pre-K. And in this option, all of the existing facilities would be retired.
In scenario 5, it's very similar to the previous scenario. There would be a new high school constructed on a new site, a new Turner Junior High, grades 7 and 8, constructed on a new site, and then every student, grades K6, would go to one 1,750 student elementary school on a new site. The central office would remain, and it would remain in use for administration and pre-K, but all of the remaining facilities would be retired.
All right, scenario 6 here. In this option, there would be physical needs work and 21st century work at the high school here, housing 9 through 12. In this option, we're showing a K-8 facility for the new elementary schools. As you can see in the diagram here, that actually be formatted in almost 3 facilities on one site due to the large number of students that would be there. Central office would receive the physical needs work and the pre-K, and all of the elementary as well as the junior high would be retired in this option.
So that's the first 2 of the themes. The last theme, and the one that has the most number of scenarios, is the attendance center theme. So scenario 7 is the scenario where the high school has both the physical needs assessment work and the 21st century renovations. Turner Junior High becomes a 7-8, a brand new facility on the Turner site. The South Jacksonville Elementary becomes a 5-6 attendance center. And then all of the remaining elementary schools become K-4 facilities. Yes. Okay, and it looks as though we've got one inaccuracy on this. The superintendent just noted that in scenario 7, the new junior high, it's shown on this sheet as a 6-8, but it's actually a 7-8. It's actually 7-8. That's correct on the other package. On the green sheet. So it's 7-8, 7-8.
Oh, sorry. All right, scenario 8. In this option, the high school would receive the physical needs work and 21st century work. At Turner, it would be converted to a 6th through 8th grade facility with an addition, physical needs work, and 21st century work. Eisenhower and South would also receive additions, physical needs work, and 21st century upgrades. This would allow Eisenhower to be a 3-5 facility and South to be a K-2 facility. And then the physical needs work at central office would allow it to house the pre-K. The remaining elementaries would be retired.
In scenario 9, the central office is remodeled for just physical needs assessment, and it remains a pre-K facility. Jacksonville High School, same thing. It gets remodeling, physical needs assessment, and 21st century renovations. The junior high is replaced with a new 6-8 on the Turner site. Lincoln Elementary gets an addition and renovations so that it can become a 4-5 center. Eisenhower gets additions and renovations so it can be a K-1 center. And South Jacksonville gets additions and renovations so that it can be a 2-3 center. The balance of the facilities are retired.
Okay, here in scenario 10, both the high school and junior high would receive the physical needs and 21st century upgrades. They would still house the current grade levels of 7-8 and 9-12. There would be a new Jacksonville Elementary at a new site housing all K-6 students. The physical needs work would occur at central office, housing pre-K, and all of the elementary schools would be retired.
And the last of the scenarios is scenario number 11. And it's actually very much like scenario number 5 in retrospect. The high school gets physical needs assessment and 21st century renovations. Turner Junior High is replaced on-site with a new 6-8 facility. The central office remains for administration and pre-K program, and then a new K-5 center for the for everyone in the school district is constructed on a new site. That is 11 scenarios down from the 22 that were originally imagined by the facilitation committee. As you can imagine, going through this is going to take a fair amount of work. So what we'd like to do is we went through that fairly quickly because we want to leave as much time for you as possible. So here are the instructions. There are 2 things that we want you to do with this information. The first is we want you to look at the funding options that the superintendent discussed. We have a sheet. It looks like this. The yellow one is the one we want to collect. We want you have other sheets that are white that you can do your work on, but we want you to record your official results on this one. We'll collect that at the end of the evening. The first exercise is to identify your preference for funding approaches. The facilitation committee really wants to understand what you think makes the most sense for the school district moving forward. And then the harder exercise is to take a look at these 11 options and identify the 3 that you think are strongest. You'll note that we've given you a whole range of options, from leaving everything open to replace everything and everything in between. And that was intentional. We want to understand what makes the most sense in your eyes. So we want you to identify the 3 that makes the most sense. What do you think are the strengths of those? What could be improved on each of them? Having done this in the past, you might think about taking this packet and with all the scenarios and breaking them up and laying them all out at your table so that you can see them all at a glance. That might be easier for you. So with that, it's a little after 7:30. If we have time for a report out, we will. We're going to gauge how far along you are. We would like to have a report out, so we'll try and give you till 10 after, and we'll see if you can be done by 10 after. All right? If you have questions, raise your hand. Someone will be around to assist you. Thank you.